Hello everyone, I'm Nida
And I'm Anishka.
and this is Girl Up GMA. Welcome to our monthly Sheroes podcast where we speak to some exceptional women and girls in society who have done some amazing work in their respective fields and have some amazing views and opinions to share. Today we have a very special guest with us today.
Joining us today is Akanksha Hazari. Akanksha Hazari is a social entrepreneur and a businesswoman determined to empower the underserved and help build a better India. In 2011, Akanksha led the team that won the HALT Global Case Challenge, and President Bill Clinton honored her for her innovative idea for scaling access to clean water in poor communities. That idea led to her founding her own company, Mpani, which is now LoveLocal. Some of her accolades are the Google India Rising Star Award, the Vital Voices Global Leadership Economic Empowerment Award, and the Ashoka Fellow. She was also the Action for India Silicon Valley Challenge winner in 2014, and her company has been recognized as a Google Studio company and a Google Launchpad company in 2018. And if that wasn't enough, she was also a world top 20 junior squash player and the captain of the Hong Kong junior national squash team. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. I'm very excited to be with two exceptional girls, I'm sure, in the making of exceptional women. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
So, moving on to our questions for today's podcast, can you tell us a little bit about LoveLocal and how it came to be?
Sure. So LoveLocal is an Indian tech startup, and our mission is to empower local retailers. So some of you may be familiar with India, or actually most places in the world, especially in emerging markets like in Southeast Asia or Africa, the Middle East, Latin America. Most neighborhoods have small local shops, and actually most shopping happens at these neighborhood mom and pop shops. In India, we call them kiranas. In other parts of the world, they're given different names. And the mission that we have at LoveLocal is to empower local shops, neighborhood shops, to actually go online and give them tools, technology tools to digitize their businesses. And we set out on this mission about 3.5 years ago because we realized that, the world is changing with technology. You have different formats of commerce, like e-commerce, becoming the new norm. And unfortunately for small businesses and local neighborhood stores, technology is not accessible. It is not something they understand or they can build for themselves. And so they really need a partner that's going to empower them with tech and tech solutions so that they can effectively provide the same experience that you get from, for example, an Amazon. Because in India's case, for example, local shops account for 40% of jobs in the country. And when you hear about politics and policy and economic policy around most of the world, healthy economies actually have a lot of small businesses. And so when you allow small businesses to fail, you actually end up with a very lopsided economy where you have a small group of very rich people with very, very large companies, and then everyone else doesn't have as much opportunity. So micro entrepreneurship and local businesses are incredibly important to the health and the wealth of any country, because they also provide a huge amount of employment at scale. And so we set out on this mission, and what we do in India is enabled your local kirana, your chemist, your fruit seller, your vegetable seller to go online and also have tools to digitize their business operations, so they have data and analytics, and enables you to basically, instead of having to walk to the local store, have an Amazon-like experience, even with your fruit seller down the streets, pay online, get home delivery. And basically, as our name says, stick to shopping at local and love local.
Wow, that's such an amazing idea, and especially considering the condition we're in right now, where going out to buy your vegetables or just your normal groceries is hard. I think this initiative is so helpful to society.
Awesome. We think so too. So thanks.
So, what would you say has been the best thing that you've done or your greatest achievement with LoveLocal?
With LoveLocal, I think the greatest achievement, to be honest, is the stories of local shops where we've either kept them in business or increased their sales. And our favorite part of our day is when we get feedback from one of our shop users or customers, that they're so excited that something that was really intimidating and what they felt was inaccessible to them is now a reality for them. So I'll give you an example just actually yesterday. So we have one of our shop partners called Hari A1 Fruits and Vegetables. He's been selling on LoveLocal for I think about a year now, and he's a fruit and vegetable seller. And he called me up and he said, hey, it's Ganpati, and I don't know if this is something, we can do, but like I also have this other business where I sell festival products. Like I sell eco-friendly Ganpatis, clay Ganpatis. And I really want to like actually put these online as well. And I've been looking it up on Amazon, and my products are cheaper, and Amazon's Ganpatis are plastic and they're more expensive and they're bad for the environment. Mine are really cheap, but now that I'm online, I can actually sell this online. And so last night, the team created his catalog with his Ganpatis in 3 days, and he's now selling these online for the very first time. And those are the things, like those are the achievements. And you can talk about the numbers, like we work with about 100,000 shops across India, but the real achievements to us come when we get the wonderful opportunity to get feedback from our customers saying, this helped me stay in business, especially through COVID. Through COVID, now customers want more online, and I didn't know how to do this. I'm so happy this is available to me. I never thought like I could do this. My kids now are interested in being in the business because a lot of kids are much more technology driven, and we're planning to leave the family business. And now with the opportunity to be like an offline store and an e-commerce business, they're more interested in actually staying in the family business. So all of these things to us are the things that motivate us.
That was beautiful. I definitely would agree. The most gratifying things would have to be the beautiful stories and the lives that you're impacting. And I think especially during this pandemic, it's just come across even more how much we need e-commerce even for our small businesses and our small shops. Especially looking back home at India, my grandparents are still living in Pune. And when this pandemic broke out, they do tend to rely on local businesses. They were really impacted by the fact that they couldn't actually go and visit it, because for elder people, obviously, the threat is a little more. So I'm just thinking that if they had this wonderful setup, even for the shops that are right next door to them, it would have been such a beautiful benefit for them. And I think that's why this project and this company is just so amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we actually have launched in Pune. So I don't know where your grandparents live, but they should check it out.
I'll definitely tell them to.
So being a social entrepreneur yourself, what do you think is the need of the hour for social entrepreneurship in today's world? And what, according to you, are some of the biggest problems that we need to address globally?
I mean, there are a lot of big problems we need to address globally. I'll start with social entrepreneurship. My view is every entrepreneur in our generation and in your generation needs to be a social entrepreneur, very, very frankly. I think we have enough data that shows, and real life experience that shows that like complete free-handed capitalism doesn't end up serving all. You need some kind of mixed economies, and we need some sort of safety nets for people. We need things that come from the government that create a more equal playing field and give equal opportunities to everybody. And so in that respect, I think businesses not only should all be social in that they should all be thinking about sustainable business. They should all be thinking about diversity and inclusion in their companies. I think ideally they should be solving a problem that makes a difference to the planet and makes a difference to a lot of people. I don't think currently we require that of businesses. If you look at a lot of businesses around the world, they aren't eco or sustainable in any way, eco-friendly or sustainable anyway. They aren't, sadly, businesses are hugely underperforming in terms of inclusion and diversity. In fact, most places, aspects of the world are falling behind there. And then there are a lot of businesses that I don't think are particularly focused on like a meaningful problem. And we have a lot of very important problems to solve. And I do think, unfortunately, it's come to like my generation going down to yours and then your kids, etc., that we have a lot of work to do. And it starts from the climate. I think that's a massive problem that we still are not addressing in any meaningful way. I think there are a lot of problems in terms of equal opportunities. So for example, we work with local businesses, but what about farmers and agriculture? What about essential services? I think one of the things that COVID highlighted, to be honest, that is essential workers kept the economy and the world going. And by and large, essential workers are the most poorly paid in the world. Whether you're talking about teachers or sanitation workers, or again, if you want to go to neighborhood shops, or you want to talk about the guy doing your deliveries, the jobs that kept the economy going are not well remunerated. And most of us, to be honest, who are able to work from home, where in the grand scheme of us, many of us are less valuable than these jobs, the teachers, the doctors, etc. I think going into more service-led professions and us trying to change the fact that service-led professions should be more attractive. It shouldn't be this massive sacrifice to your lifestyle. It should be something that someone can choose to be a teacher and live like a pretty good life out of it, or someone can choose to be any of these professions, to be honest. So I think climate, I think diversity, I think women's rights, I think overall inclusion, I think there are a lot of interesting problems. I think food is a very important one. Food sustainability. So recently, actually about a year ago or so, me and my husband stopped eating meat. And it's something we are actively working on. I think the companies like Beyond Meat and all these that are developing meat substitutes, those are super, super interesting companies. I've started eating dishes that are meat substitute, to be honest. They're pretty good. So I'm pretty satisfied. And luckily the Indian diet, I think we have great vegetarian food. So it's pretty easy to be vegetarian. So I think there are a lot of interesting jobs using technology on the climate, food, essential services. All of these things are things that I would love to see young people work on. I know this is a very long answer, but I'll add one more thing. I think young people need to be far more involved in the political system. I think one of the things that, again, I think is a flaw of our education system is they don't teach us about politics. I think the political system, to some extent, tries to make it really difficult to understand, because that's how the people in power keep power, if people just don't understand how the whole thing works. But I think young people need to be a lot more civic minded and civic aware, and they need to understand how their political system works, and not just like the main election, but at, you know, your neighborhood level, your whatever it is, your municipality level, if you're in a county, you know, whatever your race is, get involved in your community, because that leads into how your government operates, and then what services you end up getting, and how the identity and success of your country, your people, your economy is. So I think civic involvement from young people is super important, and for young people to consider going into politics and policy, and go into the system and try and change it from within as well.
We'd have to agree. I think civic involvement is something that we especially also really want to increase, not just by getting people out there and voting for change, but also being a part of that change itself. I think it's so important for younger people to want to be a part of that political system, because obviously it's really not in the best state that it is right now. And a lot of our friends, they really have the opinion that it's not a field that they want to get into. It's been corrupted and it's tarnished, and there's nothing good that could come out of that system, and you're just joining a broken system. But the whole point is, I think, to fix that broken system, and that's why we really need more civic involvement. And I don't think it's just only about entering into politics and being a part of the political system, but also just helping to enact certain policies and ideals at a grassroots level, and sort of engaging in self-government. I think that's also incredibly helpful if we would all do that.
I think over the past 2-3 years, we've seen a lot of teenagers come out and, you know, like let's take an example of Greta Thunberg, strive so that their voices are heard, which I think is a very positive change. And more teenagers need to, and young people need to think in that direction and kind of, you know, take inspiration from people like her.
I mean, she's phenomenal. And I think I think the other thing is, and this is definitely a flaw of younger generations, is attention span. You know, real change and real work takes a long time. Some of the things that we're trying to fix will not even happen probably in our generation. It will take multiple generations of consistent work. And I think the media, you know, sometimes portrays things happening as overnight successes, but Greta Thunberg for many years was showing up in front of that building by herself, but she was consistent because she was firm in her mission and her beliefs and the importance of that mission. And that's something I do want to highlight, that we have big problems to solve, and they're hard problems, and it's going to take a lot of tenacity and grit. And on your individual life journey and any cause that you're trying to work for, you're going to have to, develop like a very, very thick and strong, thick skin and strong work ethic and tenacity to see it through to completion. Even in startups, I tell young entrepreneurs that, you will hear these, like, what will be presented in the media as overnight successes. But if you want to build something, be prepared to commit 10 years of your life to it. Like, you should mentally adjust yourself to that. And I think that's really, really important for young people to understand and be patient and put in the work.
Absolutely. I think perseverance is probably the need of the hour, and it's something that a lot of us lack. I think, especially as a part of the younger generation, a lot of us have passion and we do feel passionately about certain causes. But I don't think that we have that sort of perseverance and determination to see it through to completion. It's like the first hurdle or the first obstacle you face, and you're like, well, maybe this isn't for me, and maybe I'm not supposed to be the one fixing this issue or working for this problem. But I really hope we're able to kind of overcome that. As you had mentioned, there are a lot of problems to solve, and a big one I think would have to be gender equality. And I think you mentioned that yourself, and fighting for women's rights. And that's what Nida and I are trying to do. We're trying to contribute whatever we can towards that fight and to advance that movement for gender equality. So we really had to ask this question. It's something that's really close to our hearts as well. And that is that although the number of female entrepreneurs has experienced a drastic increase recently, there is still a large disparity between the number of women and male entrepreneurs. So how do you think we should level that scale? And why is it so important to increase the number of female entrepreneurs?
Sure. I mean, this one, obviously, I don't know if it's increased drastically. It has increased, but we have a long way to go. I think if you look at most industries, unfortunately, they're incredibly male dominated. And one kind of startling statistic, especially in India's context, is that the number of women in our labor force is actually decreasing the wealthier we're getting, which is a very worrying statistic, because it seems to indicate that as we are becoming wealthier as a nation, unlike other places where wealth equated to more women going to work and being economically independent, I think what seems to be anecdotally happening, or the reason behind those numbers, is that the reasoning is that, oh, now the women don't need to work because we have more wealth at home. You can stay home and you can go into like kind of more traditional household structure. So that to me is like a very worrying counterintuitive trend that we have in India specifically. If I look at entrepreneurship and business, you're right, we have a massive problem. I mean, one statistic is that, less than 3%, I think it's now 2.4% of investor funding goes to women-founded companies. So you're talking about 97.5% or 6% of investment capital or venture capital going into male-founded companies. And if you look at the picture behind that, it's very hard to find any female venture capitalists. The vast majority of venture investors that I speak to are men. Like, I would say 99% are men. I think it's probably, I can count on my one hand how many times I've had a female partner sit across the table for me when I've been talking about the business. So I think we have a very, very long way to go. I mean, there's so many things that are, so many ways that this problem needs to be solved. I think it starts with, in the home, how we raise not just our daughters, but also our sons. I think it feeds into how schools treat boys versus girls. I think what I see, which is a wonderful dynamic in our generation, I think women support women a lot. Which I think will only help us, because I think we work as a united front now. And I think that's happening, and I see it happening at every age, which will only work in our stead. And I think when you have, I mean, there's enough data to show this. There's two very proven data cases or realities proven by many studies. One is that when you have women working, it's actually better for the economy. That women, when they earn, tend to save. It's better for the home. Women are more socially oriented or family and community oriented. And so when they do earn money, they tend to spend for their family and for their community, which feeds into also the health of the economy itself. So having more women in the workforce leads to more economic prosperity. I think a very basic logic is 50% of your population, if you have them working, that will contribute to the economy and a more successful, happier country overall. Obviously, on the other side of it, it's also shown that when women lead, they tend to bring diversity with them, and not just diversity when it comes to women, but diversity in terms of the LGBTQ community, or in terms of having colored or diverse teams in terms of color, religion, etc. Women do lead differently. And I think you can see it across the world. If you look at the most successful leadership in the pandemic, they are in countries with female leadership. I think what I'm very proud of, I think if you see most of the social causes in the world today, the important ones, they're being led by women. And in some cases, a woman as young as 15 or 16 years old, however old Greta is right now. And I think women, again, it shows care about things beyond themselves. They care about, again, community, country, they care about inclusion, and they lead the things that we've often been criticized for, and has been painted in a negative light, that we are supposedly too emotional or we are supposedly all these other things. Actually, it means we are empathetic and we put ourselves in other people's shoes, and we are sensitive, and we think about how things impact a larger group of people, and we try and solve for more people. And so I think having women in leaderships not just means that the world will become more equal because women will bring more diversity with them in all types of diversity. I think the world will be a better place because women tend to lead with a different skill set and care about mission-oriented problems. And so that's just some of the reasons that I think this is an incredibly important problem for us to focus on. And I think for women themselves, there's enough data to show when women are economically independent, we ourselves face a lot less violence, a lot less domestic violence, a lot less of these negative social issues that are so commonly faced by women. Economic independence gives us a lot of strength. And I think it's, even from that perspective, something that needs to be emphasized to girls. And another, many studies have shown that girls in sports also tend to, on a statistical basis, be less likely to be in abusive relationships, because sport seems to have a correlation with more confidence and feeling more physically strong and confident as well. And I think as women and girls, we should pay attention to those things as well, so that we can have a much happier, successful lives as individuals.
Absolutely. I think we definitely need to have more women in leadership positions. As you mentioned, I think Jacinda Ardern is like a sterling example of what female leadership can look like, especially the way New Zealand has handled this pandemic. And I think you're absolutely right when you said that women do have that tendency, especially in this generation, to support each other. And I think that's called the shine theory, which is like, I don't shine if you don't shine. And I think that was something that was explored in Barack Obama's cabinet office, where I think female officials were just helping each other and boosting each other's ideas and making sure that credit was given where it was deserved. And I think that increased the number of female cabinet ministers in Barack Obama's cabinet. So I definitely do think that maybe if we all put our minds to it, and if we all support each other to go into these fields where it's really important for us to be in, I think we can definitely help change those numbers for sure.
And I think, one more thing I'd love to add to that is, as I think I see in my generation, I'm hoping it's happening in your generation, is that you see boys and men more willing to be allies. And that they, even if they don't understand, there's an openness to having the conversation. And I think what's happened when we've seen the Black Lives Matter in the States recently, what I loved about it is that people are starting to have difficult, honest conversations. That saying that privilege exists is not an indictment, it's just an acknowledgement, so that we can start to heal the problem. And I can say, I have more privilege than you, therefore I understand where you're struggling. And when I can see, like, I will use my privilege to try and lift you up, and I will use my power to empower you. And so I think I hope we can see more of that open dialogue happen when it comes to women's empowerment as well. That, you know, men can openly and comfortably start having conversations about their privilege, and we can have allies that say, you know what, I acknowledge I have privilege as a boy or a man, and I'm going to talk to you, like, I want to learn from you, you know, what happens in your life as a woman, and how can I use my privilege and power to empower you, whether it's in the classroom, that simple things that if I see a girl has her hand up, like, I will let her answer first, because there's a lot of data to show that girls don't feel confident putting their hands up in the classroom. So if I do see a girl, I'll kind of step back and give her a chance to answer first. Or if there's a discussion going on, I'll encourage, or, you know, give a little confidence to the girls who probably have something to say, but they just have not been treated in a way that gives them a confidence to be more open. I think when we have those honest conversations of men acknowledging their privilege and acknowledging their power, and then becoming an ally and saying, okay, I'm going to work with women and girls to use my power to empower, I hope we see more of that with this generation, because that's when the real change will start to happen. When, irrespective of whether we have a woman leading or a male leading, both of them are fighting for equality. That a man will be as intolerant of woman getting paid 87 cents on the dollar and say that's unacceptable, versus us having to wait for a woman to get into that position and say, no, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, I think us at Girl Up GMA as well. So we run this sort of social media campaign where we put out articles, and we had this series recently where we had some of our male writers and male members sort of talk about topics that were close to their hearts. And these are all boys who are extremely nice and who are extremely passionate about being a good ally for women. And so they were writing on topics like male privilege and toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, and they were stepping out and addressing it. And that's what we loved. And there was this article by one boy where he was talking about how, you know, he has a really bright girl in his class, but every time she puts her hand up to answer a question, or she blurts out the answer, or she tries to take the lead in an academic discussion, she's titled as bossy. But when he does it himself, people just call him smart. And that was a really important thing for us, for him to be addressing that and talking about that. And it was so unfortunate that when we put it out on Instagram, it attracted tons of hate. We had middle-aged men coming in our comment section and just bashing that boy, and we felt so incredibly bad about it. But it just made it all the more important for us to have those discussions and to put those things out there, so
And
that hopefully
that happened with that post was that when these comments were coming in, we had our other male friends and just people from our grade and from the grade below us coming and supporting us and supporting the boy. And we had quite a few very, I would say, informative answers in the comment section. And apart from that as well, like, we've seen that with us, there are very few people around us who don't support us in our generation. So I think there is a positive change that is coming with the current generation and the future generations, and let's hope it gets better.
I think it will. I don't know if you guys watched Michelle Obama's convention speech, and I think one of the things you guys and we will just have to suck it up, that there are some people's minds that we cannot change, and some people are not going to agree. And to be honest, it is what it is, as she said. And I think there is a need to focus on the problem that needs to be solved and kind of staying persistent to the noise. I think there are wonderful things about the internet and social media. Of course, I think technology is an incredibly powerful tool, but we all know the cesspool social media can be, and just not take it personally. I'm sure there are so many people that read that and found that incredibly valuable. And I think there's power to just putting it out there and letting those people know who come back and are negative and say, we are different. And the moderates and the people, I think what happens is the extremists usually are the loudest, and the moderates always kind of stay quiet. And at this point, I think it's incredibly important that our generations are incredibly loud about the things that we're fighting for, because being quiet and being polite has not worked. And trying to work within a broken system has not worked. I think for many generations, all of us have adjusted ourselves. I think as women, we're very good at adjusting to a system that doesn't really work for us. It wasn't designed for us. In fact, it wasn't even, we weren't welcome in it. That's the system today, very frankly. It's been designed by men. It's not designed for us. And I think, we've done a really good job of like working within the system to get up and like, I'm sure your mom will tell you this. Our grandmothers have worked through these systems with even less opportunity and more constraints. Even today, you think about the way you speak because you don't want to be called bossy. You think about the way you dress because you don't want to be portrayed in a certain light. These are things on a day-to-day basis a man never thinks about. And that is an aspect of us trying to work in the system that wasn't designed for us. And I think at this point, we have come here, like we've reached a point where we need to say like loudly now, the system does not work. And we are going to redesign the system. We've reached as far as we can in a broken system. It's time for a new system and we're going to be vocal about it. And with respect to boys, I think the system hurts them as much as it hurts women, because there are incredibly negative stereotypes for men as well, in the sense that men are very poorly equipped and poorly educated about feeling comfortable talking about emotions. Men are told that they cannot, speak a certain way or be a certain way because they're not manly enough then. They are also put in a box by the same broken system, and it does them as much of a disservice as it does women, because it damages their ability to be able to be more emotional, be more comfortable speaking about the issues that are affecting them. There's a lot of data to show that, men do not feel comfortable because of the system talking about sexual abuse, or men when they are raped, because that's not masculine. You don't talk about that. Rape doesn't happen to a strong man. That's ridiculous. And so I think this broken system does as much disservice to men as it does to women.
I think I absolutely agree with that point, because like we've heard things like boys don't cry, and that just shows that how broken society is and how unfair it is to both the genders. And I think it's the stereotypes that actually create the problems. We just need to let people be how they are and just embrace them as they are. So picking up from the point about women in sports and being accomplished, or even just playing sports has given women a lot more confidence. You were a national level squash player, and I'm pretty sure that did, influence your personality and contribute to make you the person that you are today. What advice would you give to girls to carry out balanced lifestyle that and incorporate sports into that life?
Sure. I mean, I would say like I've been interested playing sports since like as long as I can remember, and I think that's very much a function of like my family and my parents. So I have a younger brother, and luckily when it comes to things like this, my parents didn't treat us any differently. And I didn't realize it until I grew up, but if I look at the girls around me, particularly in the Indian community, none of them played sports. And I realized how anomalous my environment was as compared to theirs. And I think I just had, like, I benefited so much from having that environment. So I would say to young girls today, first of all, sports it's not a chore. Like, I love sports. So first of all, sports are so much fun, and they make, like, there's few better things in terms of enjoyment. So I think you should figure out what sport you enjoy, and there's such a huge variety. So if you don't like one thing, you can figure out something else. Some people like individual sports, some people like team sports, some people like things like yoga and walking and hiking. Some people like things that are a little bit more extreme. I mean, literally there's so many options that I'm sure if you cast a wide enough net, you'll find the thing that resonates with you, your personality and your skills and your body. So I will say, don't write it off. I think, start young. I think when you start young, it becomes a habit. Like I could not imagine not playing sports, 3-4 times a week. Like it's just part of my life, and that's because I started so young. Now there's kind of two aspects to this. One, I think, irrespective of your gender, sports is an incredible trainer. And and what I mean by that is that when I look at my professional career, and I mean working, jobs, building a company, I would say at least half of the things that I was trained for, if not more, came from my experience playing sports. I think sports treats you to lead. It treats you to follow if it's in a team and you're not the captain. I think it trains you to work with other people if you are in a team environment. It treats you rules and honor and how to play honestly and fairly. It trains you how to lose and get up the next morning, figure out what you did wrong, and get back and train harder. It trains you in tenacity and grit. It trains you to be an honorable winner and an honorable loser. It trains you in the ability to kind of be disciplined and push through pain. A lot of sports is reaching your limit and mentally pushing yourself to the next level that you want to perform at. And it's not easy and it's not fun and it hurts and you can get injured. And I think sports is an incredible tool to equip you for life. And you will notice whether your parents or your schools have told you this or not, but universities, they probably told you, really look favorably upon athletes, and they don't do it for no reason. It's for all these reasons. They find that athletes, because of these skills, are able to perform better in school and at academics. But in jobs, this doesn't go away. You will find most companies will favor an athlete and a sports person over someone who does not do sports. And so that's just something, and again, it's because all the reasons I talk about. If you know that someone has been serious and disciplined about sports, you know that they have all these other skills that come with that. And all these skills are very important in any kind of job. In terms of overall health, I see it now that, I've crossed the 30 mark, that I can see any of us that have been in sports, we are a lot healthier. We don't have a lot of the ailments that I'm sometimes shocked that, peers my age complain about. My parents are in their 60s and my mom has been a marathon runner her whole life. If I look at her compared to her peers in her mid 60s, touch wood, she's healthy and hearty and still trekking and cycling and doing all the things she does. This has an incredible long-term effect on your quality of life. And then finally, as girls, as I'd mentioned, that it gives you a lot of confidence. So one, if I go back to the studies I mentioned, there's a lot of studies that show that girls who play sports and are athletic are much more likely to be in successful relationships. They're much less likely to face abuse or be in abusive relationships or face many types of domestic violence. And I think that comes from the fact that you gain confidence, you feel strong in your body, you gain confidence in yourself and the ability, again, to be strong, to win, to kind of push yourself. And I think also we know that women have a lot of body image pressures. And if I look at myself as someone who was in sports as compared to many peers and friends who didn't go into sports, I think actually I have a much healthier body image, because when you're in sports, you don't care about how you look as much as you care so much more about how strong you are, how fast you are. And I know I feel good when I feel strong. And, I have this thing that I never weigh myself. It's just something I don't want to do. I look at, do I feel good when I go for a run, for example? Do I feel strong? And if I'm not in shape, I'll start to feel a little less, less good, less fast, less perform more poorly on whatever sports that I do. That's my measure for my body image. And I'm comfortable with muscles, and I'm comfortable being I like having a little bit of strength in me, because it also means I don't fall sick. So I think sports gives you that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think I'd agree. And especially the fact that, it teaches you how to lose, it teaches you how to get up after a failure. I think a lot of us I'd speak for myself, I've never been a sports person, I've never, fo- followed through on any sports. I guess that was my bad because my mom always encouraged me. But so I think that learning of, that failure is a part of your journey, and how to get up the next day and go back to the same thing is something I learned a lot later in life. I think sports are very, very important. And I think, look, going forward, I will hopefully pick up on some sport.
Yeah, or pick up something. I mean, even yoga, like not everyone has to be, like I said, there's so many options. Even the process of like just going for a really long walk, honestly, like walking, if you walk for an hour or 2 hours, is incredibly healthy, incredibly good for your body, and is a amazing form of mental like meditation, relaxation. Put on some music, put on a podcast, put on this podcast, your own channel, and just plug in and go for a long walk. I think it'll just serve you mentally so much.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Akanksha, for joining us today and for inspiring us. You've inspired me, you inspired Nida, and I'm sure you'll be an inspiration to whoever listens to this podcast, because not only are you a businesswoman and an entrepreneur on one side, but you also have the sportswoman aspect of you. And I just think that sort of holistic lifestyle is something that a lot of girls want, but we don't always follow through on that desire. And so I think this will be a really beneficial podcast to whoever listens to it.
I think we've learned so much from this podcast, and I think a lot of our perspectives about what we want to do in the future have changed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to you guys doing like even more awesome things. And I love that you guys are doing this podcast. I think that's like an awesome step in your many steps towards changing the world, I'm sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.